Alright guys, how's it going? My name is Nyxre and welcome to the first episode of The Good, The Bad, and The Teemo, where today I'm going to be covering On-Hit Lulu. To start off, as will be provided at the beginning of every episode in this series, here's a quick reference guide and or cheat sheet for anyone interested in referring back to this at a later time, or for those of you who are interested in seeing how I went about testing this specific build. Let me note that I am in no way saying that this is the best way to build On-Hit Lulu. However, it is the way I went about doing it. Feel free to try it out for yourself and switch up the build wherever you feel necessary, and an imagery link to this reference guide can be found in the description below. So, starting off with the good, these are of course the things which are good about On-Hit Lulu and are the reasons why you would possibly be interested in trying this build out for yourself. First of all, she is a lane bully. Lulu already has a pretty long range auto attack, so when you focus the build around her being able to continuously auto-attack, she's going to prove to be very annoying when facing many champions. This is especially true for matchups against melee champions who have no gap closers. Using this build, she also has pretty good sustain. The combined effects from Ginsu's Rage Blade and Blade of the Ruin King in particular allow for her to stay in lane for extended periods of time and outlast any poke which may come her way. Another good thing about On-Hit Lulu is that she maintains the self-peel that a regular AP Lulu would. Her ultimate will knock up any enemies and possibly nullify any attempt the enemy jungler may have at ganking you. And moving on, On-Hit Lulu still has rather decent utility for a champion focused around damage. You still have the ability to speed up yourself or your allies, and possibly the most underrated thing about On-Hit Lulu is the fact that Polymorph is just as effective when building this way as it is while building full AP. This means that all game long you'll have the ability to simply cast Polymorph on the enemy carries and render them useless for a few seconds. This should hopefully be enough time for your team to gain the edge needed in any close team fight. Going hand in hand with the good utility is the fact that On-Hit Lulu is very hard to dive. Most of this is due to her ultimate being able to knock up enemies under your turret, but if you're playing On-Hit Lulu in the mid lane, your Whimsy will usually suffice on its own in keeping you clear from danger. This isn't quite as true in the top lane, as a longer lane means that the extra movement speed you lose out on by not going full AP may sometimes come as a hindrance. And finally, another good thing about On-Hit Lulu is the insane amount of wave clear. A single proc of Static Shiv coupled with a Glitter Lance is usually enough to clear an entire non-canyon wave of minions. While not the best by any means, this should be enough to buy your team some time while defending. Moving on to the bad, these are of course the things which are bad about picking On-Hit Lulu. For the most part, these are the things which aren't really a problem when you are building her full AP and only suffer because of this particular build. First of all, On-Hit Lulu has a very lackluster ultimate. While it still will have the ability to turn around teamfights if cast at the perfect time, the amount of health provided by the ultimate is mediocre in comparison to the health gained when cast by full AP Lulu. Coupled with this, On-Hit Lulu's shield also suffers from not having enough AP to really be fully utilized. When faced with a ton of burst, the shield will simply divert some of the damage away, but will never keep up with most enemies' damage output. In this case, it is better used to avoid damage from taking minion aggro, or allowing you to survive a single extra tower shot. Another bad thing about On-Hit Lulu is the very weak early game. For the most part, this won't really matter as you'll have a range advantage over most lane opponents and should easily be able to farm up into the mid game. However, for certain champions which like to all-in such as Riven, you could find yourself in a bit of a bad position. In matchups like these, you should make sure to take Polymorph early to counter any early all-ins that your opponent may try. Later in the game you'll have the damage to auto a few times after casting Polymorph, which should allow you at the very least to break even in a trade. And lastly, On-Hit Lulu lacks the amount of burst that a full AP Lulu has late game. Because you're going on-hit, your damage is transferred more into DPS and requires extended trades and teamfights to be fully utilized. This is especially true when trying to get all of your Ginsu's Rage Blade procs off, and can sometimes prove to be frustrating. Moving on to the Teemo, this section focuses on the primary problems with building On-Hit Lulu. For the most part, these problems are far worse on a fundamental level compared to the problems listed in the bad section. First of all, and this ties in with the previous section, On-Hit Lulu is very squishy. While AP Lulu isn't necessarily a tank, her shield and ultimate are usually more than enough to keep her from being obliterated by an enemy carry late game. However, this is not the case with On-Hit Lulu, as most of the time the combination of your ultimate and your shield will usually only require an extra auto attack or two at most from the enemy AD carry. Because of this, many people would much rather build full AP Lulu or another champion altogether, as the amount of utility lost is very hard to make up for in the remainder of the team's composition. Another huge problem with On-Hit Lulu is that if she falls behind, she's effectively useless. Once again, this ties into the fact that her shield and ultimate suffer greatly from the loss in AP. Unlike full AP Lulu, On-Hit Lulu cannot simply transition into a glorified support in the late game. On-Hit Lulu relies completely on being able to output consistent damage in a team fight. Luckily, if played smart, On-Hit Lulu should never fall too far behind to the point of it being impossible to catch up. Using your range advantage and the fact that the enemy shouldn't be able to dive you under tower, falling behind in CS or by a kill or two should easily be recoverable. And finally, On-Hit Lulu's Glitter Lance becomes absolutely detrimental late game. By the time you reach your full build, your auto attack DPS dwarfs that of your Glitter Lance, meaning that if you cast it, you are losing out on the damage you might need to win a fight. Some people may argue that the Glitter Lance is still useful for the slow, and while that is true, I'd counter that the slow isn't really great enough when compared to the slow of full AP Lulu for it to make a huge difference. You're usually much better off forgetting that your keyboard even has a Q key after you've passed the 30-minute mark. Anyways, that's On-Hit Lulu for you guys. If I'm being honest, I actually really enjoyed this particular build. I found it pretty hilarious how many times my lane opponent would build magic resist to counter me, only to realize later in the game that the resistances weren't doing anything. So if you're looking for something a bit different to try out every once in a while, you can go ahead and try out On-Hit Lulu. But if you're looking for something which will easily carry the game, I'd recommend looking for something else. Now, that's all I've got for this video. I really hope you guys have enjoyed this because I'd really like to make this a complete series on my channel, so any support I can get would be very much appreciated. Feel free to leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and subscribe if you're new around here and would like to see more. If you didn't like the video, feel free to leave a dislike. All I ask is that if you didn't like the video is for you to leave a comment with what you believe I could have improved on, so that my future content can improve. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys today, and I will see you all in the next one.
Thank you.